All right. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Teacup for One Movie Club, the Teacup for One Peter Pan movie marathon. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees. If you're watching, you probably know that. So welcome. So this is week 2 of the Peter Pan movie marathon. If you're new here, pretty well how it works is I pick a theme of movies that I like, and then every week we get together and talk about a bunch of movies that are kind of related to each other. So this month is Peter Pan month. I'm so excited, and this is a really interesting movie marathon, which I was discussing with our panelists before we actually went live, just saying that this is pretty well the first time we watched a bunch of different adaptations of the same story. We kind of had that with the Wizard of Oz movie marathon, but like there were a lot of prequels and sequels that kind of took the story and made their own thing. This is interesting because last week we watched the musical with Kathy Rigby. This week we're doing the Disney film, a classic. Next week we're doing the live action movie, and then we're wrapping things up with Hook. So it's like 3 weeks of the same story. And like I just personally love that. I love seeing how different actors and different directors are like going to bring a story to life. To me, that's fascinating. So today, as I said, we are discussing the Disney animated film. It's a Disney classic. It's also kind of controversial. I'm sure we'll talk about both of those things tonight. But before we get there, let's see, who do we have in the chat joining us this evening? Aubrey, always a pleasure. Thank you. Martha, always a pleasure. Oh, my cat's here. Love it. What did Eliza say? Good evening. I don't like Peter Pan. People can't fly. Eliza, how dare you say fairies aren't real? You just killed a fairy. Fairies aren't real, and I don't like crocodiles, and they don't eat clocks. Well, that is valid, yes. Meow for now. You're going to go watch squirrels. Oh, okay, Eliza. Enjoy your squirrels. Squirrels can fly. Oh, William's here too. Hello, William. All right, so I am going to bring in our guests for this evening. You know them, you love them. They're Teacup for One favorites, and I can't wait to hear what they have to say about this movie. Okay, who's it gonna be? Who's gonna come in first? It's Morgan, everyone, from Teaching Disney.
Hi.
Hi, Morgan. Welcome back. Welcome to Peter Pan Month.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. So for anyone watching, you know the drill who might not know who you are. Tell us, who are you? What do you do? What is Morgan?
So I'm Morgan. I'm a 6th grade math and science teacher who loves all things Disney. And Matt, I have something to show you.
What is it? Is it a cat?
Do you see what's behind me?
I see Tuk Tuk.
Yeah!
Is it Tuk Tuk? Is that what you're showing me? I do love Tuk Tuk.
It's not Peter Pan related, but I just opened it and I was like, he's gonna like freak out if I show this.
Oh, well, as soon as I was like, that's adorable. But I thought this was a game like, Matt, find the Peter Pan thing. I was like, I just see an adorable Tuk Tuk. I love Tuk Tuk. That's so cute. Fantastic.
You're like one of the only people that likes Ryan the Last Dragon, so I was like, he'll appreciate it.
Everyone should like Ryan the Last Dragon. It's a superior film to anything else Disney put out last year. Man, well, for animated. Encanto. I'm saying it's better than Encanto. That's why I'm going with that. I love that movie. Should have done a live show about that. Maybe we still will. Who knows? We'll see. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, Teaching Disney. What have you got coming up on the channel? I saw there was a Beauty and the Beast video today.
Yes. So there was a Beauty and the Beast, the Windows of Love mystery box that I unboxed. And then I have a awesome video coming out. I'm hoping I can finally get it out on Saturday. I've been working really hard on it. It is my flower and garden Epcot video. I now have 2 parts. So part 1 will be coming out hopefully on Saturday. And then I have a teaching video hopefully coming out on Monday. And then on Wednesday next week, I am starting Teacher's Corner, which is a brand new live stream series where I have a bunch of people coming over and we're going to be talking about teacher stuff on my live stream on Wednesday next week.
I love that. That's such a fun variety of things that you got going on. I can't wait to see Flower and Garden. I've never, I don't know, I was there once for like half a day. It was cool. It was the first day though, so like nothing was open. It wasn't cool.
Oh, it's so pretty, so good. I
like flowers. I like gardens. It's all good. All right. Well, excited to have you. Excited to talk about Peter Pan. Let's bring in our next guest for this evening. It's Lisa, everybody. Lisa,
Hi.
You're muted. There you go.
There we go. Hi, everyone.
Lisa, welcome back. I'm so excited to have you for Peter Pan Month.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for organizing this, Matt. I have lots of thoughts. I grew up with Peter Pan, all the stories, so I'm ready to dive in today.
Thrilling. So yeah, so same thing as with Morgan. Anyone watching who might not be familiar, tell us a little bit. Who is Lisa? What does Lisa do?
Yes, I am a theater producer and artist in Toronto, Canada. Woo. And I'm managing producer at Cahoots Theater. So if you're in Toronto, thank you, Vincent. Please check us out. We are gearing up for a show in June that has not been announced yet. But stay tuned. Follow us on socials at Cahoots Theater. And yeah, I'm just very happy to be here.
Thrilling. Well, I'm happy to have you. I can't wait to discuss this movie with you. And our final guest for this evening, a teacup for one favorite, here for basically every single discussion, unless I accidentally schedule them for Thursdays. And even if I do, you should watch his channel anyway. Here we go. It's Lauren from Castles, Caves, and Clones.
Hello.
Lauren, always a pleasure. So happy to have you. So, Lauren, you know the drill. Tell us, what do you do? Who's Lauren?
Well, first of all, I like Raya, too. I think that's a great movie. So, I love the little tuk-tuk. Anyway, I'm with Castles, Cape, and Clones, where we discuss everything in the Disney universe. We do like everything from unboxings to reaction videos, news. We have a live show on Thursdays, Magic Mail on Mondays, from 0 to 60 on Fridays, where I talk about the film of Walt Disney Studios. Animation studios, I should say. And this weekend, I've got 2 box swaps and a collaboration that will be airing. So check those out.
That's so. What are the box swaps, or are they secret?
No. One of them is the it's a 50 shape box swap called Place Like Home. Mm-hmm. So there's like 50 states in it, and it's really cool. Ajana Claire is the host of it.
Love her. She's
being Ajana Claire in the world.
And there's a gift every week.
Yeah, every week. There's like for every week for 5 weeks, there are 10 channels showing their opening their boxes.
Gosh, that's amazing.
So then there's that one. Then on Easter, which is Sunday, it's the Golden Egg box swap, which is a Harry Potter box swap. It's my first Harry Potter box swap. That's hosted by Melissa from Geeking Out with Melly Mel and Kristen from McDorks.
Geeking Out with Melly Mel is like a celebrity to me. She has so many Funkos, or she did. She sold a lot of them. But
she has a Sunday show that she's kind of taking a break from, and it is the best show. Like if you are a collector of anything Disney or Harry Potter, like it's a show to watch.
Oh, she's amazing, and like what really astounded me about her, even though I know it's not Peter Pan related, but I have to geek out about Geeking Out with Melly Mel. The coolest thing about her was that when I like started YouTubing, I kind of came across her channel in the Disney YouTubers community, but then she also just kind of showed up in my Funko Instagram community, like separately with all the Funko people. I was like, it's like when 2 mutual friends just seem to know each other randomly. Like you just go onto Facebook and see someone you went to high school with, like took a trip to New York City with someone you went to university with. It's like, how do they know each other? That's what Geeking Out with Melly Mel is to me. Also, that did happen to me. Someone from high school went to New York randomly with somebody that I went to university with. Like they weren't dating. They just went to New York together. I was like, this is weird, but I'm not going to question it. By now I know everyone knows everyone. That's the end of the story there. Speaking of which, look, it's Nina from Wrestling with Disney. Nina, so happy to have you. All right. So here we go. Let's talk about wrestling with Disney. Well, no, let's wrestle with Peter Pan. Here we are. Transition. So, of course, tonight we're talking about probably the most famous Peter Pan adaptation. It's the Walt Disney animated classic, Peter Pan. I feel like it's the movie that introduces a lot of people to the Peter Pan story. I know that was definitely the case with me. So, as is usually the way, I just want to do a quick opener, go around and just hear about what the movie meant to you as a kid, assuming that's the first time you saw it, and like just your first exposure to it. For me, like I said, it was definitely my first time seeing any Peter Pan. It was one of my VHSs in those classic 90s cushy VHS cases. So good. And it was just a movie that was there. And then very shortly after that, I discovered the musical, the Mary Martin one. And so I think that's why, for me, the two of them hold an equal place in my nostalgic heart, just in tandem, because they were just there for me. I think that, along with Christmas Carol, were like the two stories that, as a youngster, made me realize, oh, like the same story can exist in different movies. And I think that kind of jump-started me to really love adaptations and then directing consequently. And yeah, so like Peter Pan has just always been there for me. And I mean, it's a Disney classic. How can you not like get nostalgic when they start flying? It's so beautiful. I love it. And Tinkerbell, a classic. Morgan, how about you? What is your first memory of Peter Pan?
So I don't actually remember watching the movie. Like, I know the movie. I know I've watched it a million times. I was a daycare kid, so like every Scooby-Doo, every Disney movie has been played over like 20 times, and you just like kind of, it was on a TV and you kind of went and came as you wished. And I wasn't like too big a fan of it. I was just like, yeah, it's cool, until I went to Disney World, and then I saw Tinkerbell fly, and that just blew my mind. And I was like, what? And I'm actually more of a Tinkerbell fan than I am like a Peter Pan fan. And I think that re-solidified it when I watched the movie last night.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. I think I'm sure we'll get to it, but basically my take is that I like this movie for a lot of things that have nothing to do with Peter Pan. Like, as a Peter Pan adaptation, it's probably on near the bottom of my list, because the more I've gotten to know the source material, which I love, let's say 80% of the source material, and so much of the beauty of it, they completely cut, as is the way with Disney. Like, there were so many beautiful lines from the original that just aren't here, and I'm like, I miss them, but whatever. Lisa, how about you?
It's similar along your storyline, Matt. I like grew up with like the Renaissance VHS Disney cassettes from the 90s, and I remember always like only watching right before they get to Neverland. Like, I always just wanted to like watch like Nana the dog and watch little baby Michael and like see them fly around their bedroom. So I like remember watching that a lot. I then like really loved Hook, which I know we're going to be talking about in the next coming weeks, and Finding Neverland with Johnny Depp and Kate Winslet. I have so many thoughts about that one, but I know we're not talking about that one here. But I think what's really interesting to me is that I was such a Tinkerbell fan as a kid, same as Morgan, but it has nothing to do with the movie. Like, I remember having like a poster of her in my room. I think it's still at my parents' house right now. And it was like her attitude. But then rewatching it for tonight, like to talk about it tonight, I'm like, I don't like Tinkerbell in the movie.
I don't.
She's awful. I've been like struggling these last couple of days of like, wow, trying to reconcile all my like childhood nostalgia for specifically Tinkerbell, and like realizing I actually didn't like her in the film. But yeah, so it's been a long road with this specific movie.
Yeah, I hear you. And just so funny to me that you say you usually just watch the first bit, because I've realized recently that my favorite part of Peter Pan is everything in the nursery. Like, with the musical, Act 1 is my absolute favorite, just with the parents and then Peter coming and like talking to Wendy, and all of that to me is so magical. And then when they get to Neverland, which is where the magic literally is, I'm just like,
Exactly. I feel the same way. Like, I watched it with my partner, and when they landed in Neverland and everything happens there, I'm like, I don't remember any of this.
Yeah, I know.
I guess I really truly only watched the first part of the movie over and over again, because this is all so, it doesn't compute in my head.
Yeah, no, I think maybe it's almost too magical. And like maybe that's just what it is.
I don't know. Or maybe it's like I blacked it out because it's so problematic.
Or that too. Yeah.
We'll
yeah.
I'm sure.
We will.
Matt sparked a memory for me that I didn't even know I had.
What was it? What is it?
One of my dance recitals, they were themed every year, and we did an entire Peter Pan dance recital. And I acted in it because we had acting classes, and I acted in it, and I had an acting role. And I was like, why did I not remember this until this very moment?
Was anyone Tiger Lily?
Yes. Oh. Yes. My entire jazz class was Tiger Lily.
Oh, wow. Big history there. Wait for my video. We'll see. Should come out Friday.
Well, it was like a dance. You just looked like, I forget what song it was to. It wasn't even to like a Native American song. It was just like a warrior song. Oh. And it was just like
anything's better than what makes the red man red.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
I was Michael. I remembered I was Michael.
Hey, Mary.
Michael. The annoying one, even though I've grown to like him more than John. I also have issues with John in this movie specifically.
Baby Michael is so cute.
And he has the teddy bear.
And his like little like diaper pocket thing in his back. Like it is so cute.
We got your nurseries are where children do the most magical play. So I think I think that's it.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I like the nursery is because I'm just personally really drawn to, like I said, Neverland in some ways is almost too magical. Like I think it's more magical to just have a like sprinkle of magic and something that feels very grounded in reality versus just here's all the magic. Like Wizard of Oz, one of my favorite scenes is in the Twister when it's still in sepia tone, but like all the crazy stuff's happening in the window. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's magical. I love it. But we've done a whole month of Wizard of Oz. We have to move on. Lauren, what is your nostalgic take on Peter Pan? What are your memories as a young man watching the movie?
I am going to show my age. I existed before the VHS tape. And many moons before the VHS tape, actually. And so my memories are either would have been from it playing on Wonderful World of Disney on TV when there was only 3 channels, and or a re-release in the theater, because that's what Disney used to do. It used to open the vault and put it in the theater. So I remember I just fell in love with it right away, and I've always loved Peter Pan. I have a different appreciation of it now, having gone to animation school and just seeing like the Mary Blair, who is artist who did a lot of the color styling and layout inspiration for the film, is one of my favorite artists, or is my favorite artist. And so looking at that film and seeing how much she influenced the style is just absolutely beautiful to me. The animation, especially with Hook and Smee, done by Ollie Johnson and Frank Thomas, is like top-notch stuff. So it's just really cool. I was always a Bobby Driscoll fan.
He was in the other pirate movie, right?
Yeah, he was in that. He was also in. He was like a star at Disney, like early on. Like he was in "So Dear to My Heart," Melody Time. He was in there for a little bit, and he had a very tragic childhood. Actually, he ended up dying of overdose shortly after Peter Pan. And Peter Pan was, he had already kind of gone to this retiring age at Disney. He hit puberty. His voice was changing, as you could hear in Peter Pan, and they didn't have as much use for him. And unfortunately, back then, they didn't really protect the child actors, and a lot of them went on drugs and did all the stuff. So he had a very tragic childhood.
It's so depressing. I think I kind of half knew that.
Yeah,
but there's just like this really long, sad history about a lot of people who were involved in Peter Pan, like J.M. Barrie and like those kids, all the kids that inspired it just grew up to have really depressing lives.
Yeah.
Especially Peter. Like one of my favorite plays of all time, which I've only read, I haven't seen. It's called Peter and Wendy, which at some point I want to either direct or at the very least do a reading. Maybe a reading on the channel. It's probably illegal, but whatever. I only have like 1,500 subscribers. No one's going to know who matters. So yeah, but it's amazing because
your live stream off. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's it. But no, like that play is so good. It's about the woman who inspired Alice meeting the guy who inspired Peter Pan. Like at that point when they meet, she's I think 80 and he's in his 30s, and they're talking about their life experiences and how it was shaped by the stories that were based on them. And it's so beautiful but so depressing, and it's the best play ever. Everyone should read it. Yeah, it's on Amazon. Yeah,
I thought it was ironic that he died like in such a like grown-up way.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like Peter Pan, and he ended up having to grow up, which was crazy.
Yeah, it's the Peter Pan tragedy. It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing. Okay, let's go to the comments here. Okay. Mary says, favorite Peter Pan. Yes, Mary. Were you here last week, Mary? Same with me. Well, actually, I don't. I loved the Mary Martin one at the time. Now I'm just like, it's not as good as the Kathy Rigby one. But for nostalgia, love it. Mary Blair. And also, I love Mary Blair. She is a goddess. She is a queen. And I have like some Mary Blair concept art that I got with one of my pre-orders at the Disney store. I think it's for Cinderella though, but like still just the Mary Blair style. Oh, it's so beautiful. I just love all of it. What's Bobby have to say? 82 theatrical re-release. I'm so impressed that you know what year it was re-released, Bobby.
Whoa.
Well done. That was before I was around, but
me too.
Yes.
Matt, I found pictures.
Of what?
Of the production.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you have to share it.
Oh no.
Can you
They're
show
from
them to us now?
the side of the stage, so they're not the best, but like this is me.
Oh, okay, that's cute.
Oh my gosh.
We were playing the Lost Boy. We had to play multiple parts at times.
Oh.
So we were the Lost Boys.
Oh my gosh.
In like random jeans and a t-shirt I had.
Oh.
How
And then
cute.
this was my Tiger Lily hip hop dance.
Okay.
We put like lipstick and what like
Oh no.
Oh no.
No.
And then this was I gotta show you. These were my little crocodiles.
Oh my god,
that's cute.
that's really
That is
cute.
Yes, they were tappers. They were they did John Legend's Rocket, or not John Legend's, Elton John's
Crocodile Rock?
Crocodile Rock.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then
That's adorable.
oh my gosh, where is it? Oh, I just had it. Oh, here's our hook.
Ooh.
That is
Nice.
a tall person.
Wow.
Yes, he was very tall, and I'm very well. To be fair, that's me next to him, and I'm like 4'11", so I'm not as tall as he looks. It's just, and then this was like our ending. This was my little Tinkerbell outfit.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
cute. I love the green. So iconic.
Yeah.
We're comparing. Hold on. I have a picture of me as Hook.
Oh my god, you were Hook? Oh my god, Matt.
And this was like 4 months ago.
That is great.
Yeah, I was Captain Hook at a hotel for a show that was done at like the Hilton or something for families in Niagara Falls. Yeah, good
And then
times.
this was like my prime action shot that someone caught. We were
Ooh.
doing ballet. I'm on point, and I
You're
jumped.
flying.
We
You're
were doing
flying.
like a Pirates of the Caribbean dance. We were supposed to be the ship.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Ooh, very interpretive. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love a good interpretation. It makes me so happy.
You have to get creative because there were like I think 54 dances, and they all had to be Peter Pan themed.
Okay, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the whole world.
it's
The
like,
whole
you gotta
world
get
of
creative
dance.
and pull stuff from everywhere.
Beyond me. Like just the level of creativity that's needed to figure out how to adequately showcase so many people and so many numbers,
Yeah.
so many costumes. Yeah. What do we got here? I read the book this week. My mind is blown between the difference. See, exactly.
Yeah.
Disney did the classic Disney thing, for better or worse, where they just kind of took the core story and then turned it into their own thing, which is just a full out different entity from the original. And I guess that kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to ask, which was, now that we've all kind of revisited it very recently, how does it hold up for you now compared to back in the day, which we've already kind of touched on? Like for me, I'm kind of coming to terms with the fact that I don't like it, at least as a Peter Pan adaptation. And I'm trying to reconcile for myself that I can like it as a Disney movie, as its own thing, minus the problematic, well, not even minus problematic issues, acknowledging the problematic issues, but just as a Peter Pan adaptation, there are others that I think are truer to the stuff that I love, like I said, from the source material, because I think this takes the superficial things about the story and then just leans into that, like at the end especially, kind of giving the implication that it's a dream, which is a choice. And I'm glad they made a choice, but I think Neverland is significantly less interesting when it's reduced to it was a dream, because I don't think what happens in Neverland, I don't think it's as psychologically pertinent to the kid characters as something like Wizard of Oz, for example, or Alice in Wonderland. Like, I think it's a better story if it is a physical place that they go to. Plus all the things with Tiger Lily and her people, which so much more uncomfortable now than it ever was as a youngster. And we'll have a dedicated chat for that probably right after this. But the things that were good, I think, that I didn't notice when I was younger, like Lauren said, is just the artistry for the animation. I think it's, like, in terms of visuals, one of the most beautiful Disney films, especially with the Mary Blair influence, and also just having animation to convey the flying. I think it's some of the most beautiful flying sequences in any Peter Pan films, because like on stage, you're restricted to the wires, which I think is magical in its own way. Live action Peter Pan films, I just don't like flying in those because it looks too fake to me, and it doesn't have the fluidity or the freedom that I think you need when someone is flying. It's the same issue I have with movies that take place underwater, like the logistics of having actors in the most unnatural positions in like harnesses trying to look like they're comfortable when you know they're not. No, like the animation just adds this beautiful natural quality to just how Peter moves when he's flying, and I'm in love with it. It's so good. Let's go opposite. Let's go Lauren. How does this movie hold up for you now?
It still holds up. I mean, yeah. I love it. It's not. There really isn't a Disney film that I don't like. I love them for different reasons, and this one definitely is because of the artistry, because of the animation. As an adaptation, I think that it doesn't bother me as much that they change so much, because that's what Disney did. I think that it's amazing that throughout the 40s, most of the animators and artists were at war, and they had been developing the film since the late 30s. And in fact, if you watch The Reluctant Dragon, you'll see where Rob Benchley goes to visit the studio, and you'll see maquettes of Hook and some of the characters from, and that was in the early 40s that The Reluctant Dragon came out. And it's just I don't know, like it's just an interesting thing. There was Cinderella, Alice, and Peter Pan that came out in the early 50s, and the fact that they were able to resume to such a wonderful animation style and storytelling after the war was remarkable to me. For me, I look at the film through those eyes in terms of what Disney, the history of Disney, what they were able to do, the artistry, and things like that. Although I will have to say that, I was watching your video on whether Neverland is heaven.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's always been a hellish place for me. Like, I'm like, why would anybody want to be here? I guess maybe Peter Pan is the only version where I may want to go to Neverland, as opposed to other places where it's like so, like, oh my god, this is like hell to me.
I remember seeing that in your comment, and yeah. No, like when I think back to all the Neverlands on screen, there are very few I'd actually want to visit. This is probably the one because it's pretty. It's Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lisa, what are your thoughts? How does it hold up for you now? I know we kind of discussed the Tinkerbell thing.
Yeah, I know. Well, I just want to first I appreciate, Lauren, your knowledge and history on the animation because I don't know any of that. So all of that institutional knowledge that you're sharing is so great. So thank you. And I'm learning so much. So I appreciate that. The way that it holds up. So yeah, aside from Tinkerbell, I mean, yeah, the first act of it is still so magical to me. I just love everything, the comedy with the father and Wendy, and Peter coming and teaching them how to fly. That's all beautiful. But yeah, we'll get into it. But the whole blatant indigenous racism was horrendous. And it the also the women hating, everyone was against Wendy, Wendy the mermaids. It was, I do not want to go to that Neverland. That does not seem like a place I would thrive. But I appreciated the animation. I love that flying scene where they're going over London.
Oh yeah.
That there was I still remember feeling that kid joy of wow, they're flying, wow, look at all those beautiful colors. So parts of it still hold up, but I feel looking at it with adult eyes and eyes of a person who understands the ramifications of what they've done, not only in Peter Pan, but a lot of other Disney movies with racism. It's yeah, that wasn't it. That wasn't it.
I could be clear that I do not enjoy the racist part.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, and I'm because I remember reading the book in high school, and I remember a lot of the visuals Disney didn't do, but they really kept and held on to the indigenous racism, and I was that I don't, of all the things that they wanted to hold on to as the producing company, I did not understand, rewatching it now as a 20-something-year-old. So there's a sad little disappointment in it, but I'm also well, what do you expect when it's coming from that time period? And the people who were working in the studios at that time were white, and they had a certain education and a view of the world. So how to reconcile all of those thoughts. But there's still parts of it that are magicful. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, no, there's a lot to discuss with that. I recommend everyone watch the video. I'm going to debut on Friday, but I'll give you a preview in a second. But first, I want to give Morgan a chance to talk about how it holds up for her. Then we'll move into our discussion about Tiger Lily and Friends.
So I never liked it, and I still don't like it.
Yay!
Big shock. Here's the shock. I don't even remember why, but I hated everything that had to do with Peter Pan from when I was young. Never liked it, never wanted to watch it. And then all of a sudden there was one day where I was homesick, I think, and the Tinkerbell series was on. And I really loved and I was I don't remember Tinkerbell being this good and this funny and all these things. And I was what? I'm so confused. And then so I started liking Tinkerbell. And then I went back and watched it finally. And I was oh, now I remember why I hate this. People always get on Beauty and the Beast about Stockholm syndrome, and I'm like, this is Stockholm syndrome. Hello, like where is the talk there? And this is like every bad boyfriend I've ever had in my life. This movie is literal, and then like he's literally turning like kids against their parents. Like I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this movie? This guy has essentially kidnapped all these kids, and they're just okay with it, and they're staying there, and then they fight this like 50-year-old man. Like, what is this? And then the racism with Tiger Lily, and then the sexuality of Tank sexualizing her, like that first scene that she's in where she's looking in the mirror and she's like, "Ooh, my hips are bigger," without saying it.
Oh my God,
like,
I know. What? And like she's like the tiniest woman in film history, and she is concerned about how wide her hips are. Like, yes. What fat phobia are we doing here?
And then the way the mermaids are. The way the mermaids are against Wendy, and Pan just doesn't even care, and how forgetful he is. He's just like, oh, it's not about me, so I don't really care. I'm like, oh my God, this is and then he says he's never grown up, yet he is like constantly thinking about women, and I'm like, that is literally every kid I teach right now in my school. Like, you can't get more grown up than you already are, Pan. Like, let's just cut to the chase.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there.
There are a lot of feelings watching this lesson.
Oh no, and like, absolutely, all completely legit. And like I do want to talk about Tinkerbell as well, but no, we'll come back to Tinkerbell. So yeah, Tiger Lily.
I'm not gonna lie, the crocodile is my favorite character.
Oh, I do love the crocodile. My gosh, I love it. Oh, this is something we can discuss later as well. Who is smaller, Thumbelina, Tinkerbell, or the Borrowers?
Oh, I still think Tinkerbell's the smallest.
I think Tinkerbell, because Thumbelina kind of canon, she's like thumb sized. I think Tink is
it's like even tinier,
like half thumb at most.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
That is.
Yeah,
I'll do a video.
I mean, if you go to Disneyland, she's pretty people sized.
Oh, but it's because they shrink you down to her size when you go to the meet and greet.
Oh yes,
yeah, the magic, yeah,
the magic.
Yeah.
Magic, of course. All right.
That's not available anymore currently. Still.
The hugs are coming back in like what, a week? So I feel like that'll
the minute I can
day after
I will be full on tears hugging Sully the minute I am allowed to. I've never met him in my life.
I want them to bring us Panda May from Turning Red, and I want to hug her.
Oh like yes.
Oh, I know.
They didn't start having Mike and Sully as meetable characters until Monsters University came out. Mm-hmm. And then when I went after that movie came out, they weren't like, they were on their off season or whatever, and then they were starting to get rid of them, and I was panicking, and then COVID happened, and I was like, no, but he's clearly still here, so that's I don't care about Mike, I care about Sully. I just want to.
I think they only do Sully because when I went last time, I got to meet Sully and hug him, but it was like a day or two after they got rid of Mike at the meet and greet, and I felt so cheated. But still, Sully gave a very good hug, so that's why I'm excited for Panda May.
I'm envious of you, like 1,000%.
Oh yeah, there's a picture somewhere. I'll find it later, just to. Even though you literally can't see me because he's hugging me, and you just kind of see the back of my shirt, and then just him looking like he's smothering me.
That's like when I hugged Baymax. When I hugged Baymax, I cried tears of joy.
I'm not sure if this has to do with the crocodile being Mary's favorite, or if she just likes hugging characters, but Mary agrees with something we said.
May.
Oh, she said May. Oh, I thought it said me. There we go.
It's May.
Me too. May. Yes, May. I want to hug her so badly. That whole movie is basically just about people loving to hug the adorable panda, and I'm here for it. Yes. I love that movie so much. Okay. So Tiger Lily, let's discuss that. It's so uncomfortable. And it felt like it was almost at a point where I almost turned off the movie, where I was like, this is hard to watch. This is so difficult to watch for me now, and I don't know if my perspective has just changed or if I was like blissfully unaware as a youngster as to how bad it actually is, but Yeah. So I guess just how do we feel about that? How do we feel about being able to appreciate this movie? Because as we've touched on, there is so much that we all like love about it, but how are we able to enjoy it, or are we able to enjoy it while still acknowledging the things that are not good about
Yeah.
it?
So I watched on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
This weekend, and I will say I was happy to see Disney's acknowledgement at the beginning before the movie started. And I was reading how like Peter Pan is not available for like children profiles. So if you set your, so like I appreciate what like their acknowledgement. I don't think it's enough. There's a part of me that's like, well, Disney is a multi-billion-dollar company. They should like donate to Indigenous survivors of residential schools. Along with that, as like an actual action. But like as a viewer, I think it's like, it's with anything that's problematic, but also has like that magic and that like that has inspired you throughout your life. Like, how do you reconcile those thoughts? Like, do you just like, no, I'm never going to watch Peter Pan anymore? Well, you take away that wonderful animation that Lauren's talking about and that really interesting history that Disney is like providing us after the war and like how much they've done to like circulate that content. So I think it's like that acknowledgement of how problematic it is, but also like not erasing that, because that is unfortunately part of the history that we enjoy, and like it is part of my childhood. Because yeah, I was reading articles of like, well, they should just get rid of it, and like, and we should never see it again. And I'm like, but then that's just like not acknowledging the problems that we did, so that we learn not to do that again in the future. You know,
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
And I think
exactly what I think is that you can't censor it out. First of all, that leads to more problems in terms of art and what do you say is good art and bad art. Even though you could say that racism is intrinsically bad, at the time they were not planning. They did not say let's put a racist scene in here. At the time, it was acceptable, which we just can't fathom there ever being a time where there would be racist scenes that were, But I mean, you look at Hollywood throughout that time period, and I mean, even like a film like Breakfast at Tiffany's with Mickey Rooney's character, and very stereotypically Asian, and other, so it's not just a Disney thing. It was, at the time. I think that they should do more in terms of the education as well. Like, I'm glad that they have that part there, but I think it needs to be even more visible than that.
Right.
And I like
it's only 12 seconds. You can't even read. Again, not to advertise my video too much, but I tested how much you can read in 12 seconds, and it's like the first sentence.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I like this idea of, donating to indigenous groups. And although I don't know, maybe they do donate to a lot of different organizations, and they do now have a very good diversity program where they are trying to do. I mean, you look at Disney animation now, and you got Raya, you got Encanto, you got Turning Red, which are much better representations of people of color than back then. So they have made a huge step forward. So anyway, yeah, it was a time period which was unfortunate, and it doesn't make it any less cringeworthy. I watched it again, and I'm like, oh. But at the same time, you can't excise it from the movie either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I will say, Lauren, in that respect of like how better like the trajectory of Disney's growth into representation and inclusiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I would also challenge them of like how many artists of color are at leadership positions. I don't know. I don't know what their leadership and like their CEO and board of directors looks like. But I am curious, like, okay, if you are going to be producing Turning Red and Raya and Encanto, like what is your leadership looking like? Are you doing that? And that's why I was like super interested that the Turning Red director and creator got a position in Disney that is a leadership role. And I think that's a great step forward. And I think those are the strides that have been needing to be taken over the decades. So it's great that that Disney is doing that. It's a long time coming though, because like if that's only happening in like 2022, why wasn't that happening in like the 90s? You know? So
yeah. No, and I think it's so important. This is something that I sort of discovered while I was researching for my Tiger Lily history video, is that it really does all come down to leadership, because it's kind of been a more pertinent thing in recent Peter Pan adaptations to try to make a point to cast an Indigenous actor to play Tiger Lily, which, yes, fantastic. Granted, that should be like an obvious and that should be the bare minimum, but it hasn't been for so long. But it's still, the portrayal is in the hands of the people who are in the key creative positions. So you have something like the NBC Peter Pan, which, yes, got a fantastic Native American composer to rewrite the songs that were problematic, and I think the work he did there was fantastic. They had an Indigenous actress playing Tiger Lily, but it was still directed, choreographed, and costume designed by white creatives who clearly didn't get consultation because there was a lot of backlash to how the choreography portrayed the culture, how the costumes portrayed the culture. And like, yeah, it really, again, it's great to have the involvement of Indigenous creatives, but it doesn't mean much if the people who are making the decisions don't honor that. Then it's just almost performative, which is problematic as well. But let's going here to the chat. There's some great points. As someone whose favorite movie musical is extremely problematic, always down for acknowledging the wrong and taking steps towards reparations, including donating to advocacy groups, platforming marginalized voices, lobbying for interest in marginalized communities, etc. And that's kind of where I think Disney could be doing more with how they're presenting these things on Disney Plus, because we do have the disclaimer, which is only 12 seconds. At the very least, it should be longer. But I think it would add value if they made you watch something like even a minute or two beforehand, that like you can't pause it. You have to watch some kind of mini historical documentary for context.
Right thing. You can't fast forward through
it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Watch it.
Yeah. Like if the content is going to be there and they claim they want to spark conversation to promote a more inclusive future, I think that's what it says, like, then do that, Disney. They have the website, but from what I've seen, the website isn't that informative. It's just very tip of the iceberg. And yeah, like Mary says, which we already kind of said, it would be a great discussion point for parents to start to say, here's not what to do and here's why. And I think that's the main thing. I think as adults, we're able to contextualize it and we're able to enjoy the movie for all the reasons we've already discussed. Like we can acknowledge what's good about it, acknowledge what's problematic, and then like move forward. But the fact is that this movie's being introduced to a lot of kids who just don't know historical context. They just see what's there on screen. And how many parents are going to actually have the discussion based on the Facebook groups I'm in, where people just get angry that disclaimer exists? I feel like not a lot. So I think that's just where Disney could be doing more. And then it also just made me kind of reflect back on how I viewed it as a kid. And I don't think, maybe I'm just like rewriting my own history. I was able to not even separate. I didn't make the connection between the Indigenous characters in this movie and actual Indigenous cultures. But I think that's because when I reflect back, like my elementary school gave us a fair bit of Indigenous history, like grades 2 through to grades 5. Because I remember like we learned a lot about different tribes and different groups that were from the area where we were, and like there was a fair bit of education for me personally growing up that, like, looking back, I'm sure there could have been more and it could have been better, but it was enough for me to not even connect that that's who these characters were supposed to be in the film. I think it was when I was older, like 12 or 13, that I actually made the connection and connected the dots to say, wait a second, these are supposed to be like the First Nations groups that are from North America. This isn't good. So like for myself, I'm grateful that I had that education and that context, which I think I just took for granted that it was what it was. But I don't know how common that is for kids.
Yeah. I think being someone who is in education, this is talked about a lot, how things over the years, like why people are the way they are, why they think the way they think, and why we have this like racism still in our society and things like that. Because to a lot of people, it's really obvious, like just don't be racist. But it's like, it's not as easy as that, because especially when you watch things like this, if you think back on it, like Native American history was not known then. Like it wasn't as known as it is today. Like what happened with the Trail of Tears and everything, it wasn't taught in school. A lot of people left school, a lot of women left school after 8th grade at that point. A lot of people didn't, if they did go on to high school, and a lot of people didn't go to college and studied it. It wasn't something that like a lot of the times in the older US history books especially, they say all the great things that America did. They never touch on the bad things until it started to be problematic and they started to integrate it more and more and more. And I think it's really just the lack of knowledge that brings these things up. And like what's socially acceptable that at that time and what's not. And I feel like there's been a lot of literature that has come out in the past like 20, 30 years about Native Americans that has made it really evident, like, oh, this is not something that they actually do. This is like not like, because people just, I guess they just thought that's what it was because that's what they had in the history books and throughout whatever. So it's hard to watch things like that because you always have to think back of like, well, what was this person like? For me, I always think of what was that person taught? What were they not taught? And what was socially acceptable at that time? Because I'm just blown away by how much is still not taught in certain areas, not like, and it varies state to state because every state is responsible for their own curriculum. Like for example, they have a whole unit in there every single year of history. It's just on PA history, like just on Pennsylvania history. And me growing up in New Jersey, I was like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, I know what the Gettysburg Address is. I know it was a thing. I never had to memorize it. We kind of went over it for a day and moved on with our lives. And that's like a whole 2-month thing in Pennsylvania. It's so big there. And same in Florida. The Spanish colonization is like a huge thing down here. And I never knew because I was like, yeah, I know it happened. We didn't really talk about that much. We gotta just move on. But yeah, I think it's like it's really depends on like where you are, where you get your education, and what is talked about. Because I think I've mentioned it before on this live or another live that some history books don't refer to slavery as slavery. They refer to it as they refer to it as an indentured servant.
What?
I went to school with a girl who literally took her U.S. history book from her high school. I think she was in like one of the southern states. I'm not sure which one. And she literally opened it up, and where it should say slavery, it said indentured servant.
I'm sorry. That is so appalling.
Oh my God.
And it's the same thing now with all the like, I know you guys were talking about, oh, Disney does a lot, and I do agree they do a lot, but what they've been doing recently that has gotten them in the really hot fire, I don't know if it's like known all over the country, but they did support people who were supporting the legislation for the Don't Say Gay bill that just passed.
Yeah.
That has now made my life terrible. Because now I have to write up kids and tell their parents if they're kissing the same sex, and it's crazy. It's crazy, and there's no like fine line. They're like, it has to be age appropriate. Well, what's age appropriate? Doesn't say. Yeah,
Like,
and they're trying to. It's been big news down here. I'm sure because I'm close to the parks, but they've been trying to backpedal, and now they have funded money to people who are trying to get the Don't Say Gay bill revoked, and they're funneling money to people. And there was like a whole Disney walkout, like Disney employees when they were on break walked out of the park and sat in the front of the park to protest what Disney had done. And it's I don't know who did it. I don't know who greenlit it, but I feel like Disney is still very problematic and doesn't always think through what they are doing until it's too late, especially recently. I feel like they never had these issues really before, and they're still getting into hot water even now. And it's kind of sad because they did release that short with last year about the gay couple, and like that's another conversation for another day. But with Tiger Lily and those kind of things, and the same with like the kidnapping of children and taking them, and the same with how women are treated. Like when you think about it back then, that was okay.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, like it was okay to hate your wife. Like no one cared.
It's awful. And I mean, I think like that's what you were talking about, like in terms of education, like that's what will like stomp out like oppression and like xenophobia, like this fear of other people and the differences that we all have, which just makes us so uniquely beautiful and wonderful, is not taught like worldwide. And it's not taught, like Matt, you and I like grew up around the same area. I did not have the same Indigenous classes.
You didn't?
I didn't. I remember seeing, as you were saying this, I remember like thinking about the Indigenous men in Peter Pan and thinking when I was a kid, those are not people, because they weren't animated like people. They looked like animals.
Yeah.
And I remember like going to school and having like an Indigenous friend, but like also thinking like, you're not the same as what was portrayed on screen. Like how messed up is that? Like that's so harmful. And so it's like it's everything that you're saying, Morgan. It's the education that is going to like determine the course of like safety in all areas of our life. I do also like in terms of like Disney like backpedaling and doing like, not being a great, entity. They're a corporation, like they're a company. They get tax breaks from the government. So they're like in the whole lobbying industry of, making sure that they are getting the best things for their work.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate and it's not right. And I hope that, as we move out of this like capitalist, neo-feudalistic world that we're in now into a more socially aware and socially strong place where companies can advocate for people and not because of like their own corporate gain. Because that's like the history of what has happened with Disney and many other production companies, like all of Hollywood,
I've always defended Disney like to a T because I'm obviously like love Disney, but and I always use that like when everyone was talking about let's get rid of Tiger Lily out of the Peter Pan scene. It's been a while since I watched the movie. I just watched the movie for the first time in like 10 years yesterday. So I was like, why? I don't understand like why you want to do this. Why do you want to do that? And I completely forgot about the Red Man song and the whole scene. It just was not in my brain. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. But I'm like, I always was like, well, it's not the current Disney's fault that was something they put out because that was like what was okay. Same with like the whole Splash Mountain
Hmm.
thing. Like, I'm like, let's look back. Like, this was something that was socially acceptable in that time.
Except Splash Mountain was built in the 90s. They knew better. That was a lapse of judgment.
Was this the Song of the South?
It's based on Song of the South, which even by the 90s they knew enough to ban. But they just decided to make it into a ride because Michael Eisner wasn't thinking straight. So
yeah. But, and now they're redoing it to be Princess and the Frog. But I'm like still like with that movie and everything. I'm like, it's not current Disney's fault. It's not like it's not Bob Chapek's fault. It's not Bob Iger's fault that was something that was done. It was they came into it and they did what they could with it and they're trying to make it better. But like with that whole thing, I was like, that was your fault. That's your fault. And now, and you're not owning up to it. And now, like, you're going to cause a lot of issues from that. And that's what I just don't like about the current climate in Disney. Because I feel like it keeps happening. And it's not changing. And that's what, like, gets me. Because I'm like, oh, stop doing it. Because now I go to the parks and I see political statements happening pretty much on a weekly basis. Like, someone has some political agenda when they're there. And I'm like, can you not? Like, please, can you not?
Yeah. And I think the big thing with Disney is that it's just, like you said, it's a corporation. So we have the corporate-minded people that probably and do have a very different mentality from the creative minds, like the Dami Shees at Pixar, who are giving us things like Turning Red, and like the people who are trying to push for inclusivity from a creative standpoint. And I'm sure there are people with like equal-minded people in both camps, but there is definitely, I think, that conflict of interest there. And that's another big thing that just needs to be addressed.
Yeah. And plus it makes all the lines for Peter Pan so long when they like threatened to take her out. And I was like, why? I just want to ride the ride. Stop making them 3 times as long.
It's so interesting, this argument of like erasing like Tiger Lily from the story, because then you're in turn erasing the indigenous characters, even though it's problematic. Why don't like they can like remake Peter Pan and do it better, or like in these adaptations like cast appropriately, rewrite the songs, rewrite the plot devices so it's actually like an impactful representation of indigenous women and indigenous people. But like I don't understand, like just getting rid of them is not also like not the answer. That's not it either.
I feel like, well, again, promoting my video that's coming out soon, the sort of conclusion I came to for myself is that I think in some circumstances there's value to eliminating the indigenous characters if you don't have a production team that can do it appropriately. And most production teams don't and can't. So like a lot of theatrical productions recently have taken to adjust to like still having Tiger Lily as a character, but adjusting exactly what her group is. Because like in terms of narrative, they don't have to be indigenous characters. It needs to be a group that's at odds with the Lost Boys that can unify with them and become their allies. So there was a production.
The song, just put a different song over it.
But there was a production that changed them into like a like racially based group that was just a group of girls that were like the girl version of the Lost Boys, and Tiger Lily was their leader, and they were called the Pounce, and they loved cats. That was their thing, because Tiger Lily, Pounce. I'm like that's to me the way to do it, unless you are able to do it respectfully and appropriately. And I think the sad fact is that very few indigenous creatives are going to be mounting a production of Peter Pan, because there's a very complicated history there with Peter Pan and their culture. So I think if the average theater company is mounting a production, they should probably err towards just come up with something new. And that's a perspective that I read suggested by a lot of indigenous like articlists and editors, saying like turn them into aliens, because it's a portrayal that has its history and its foundation in racism ultimately. Because
I like, for some reason there's like a part that like my insides are like, but that's still a erasure of like them, because like that like J.M. Barrie like whatever, he was racist when he was writing it and did not have the nicest things to say. But it was still an interpretation of Indigenous culture. And so if we are now here trying to produce a theatrical version of Peter Pan, and you can't find Indigenous creatives or Indigenous actors to act these in the best representation as possible, whether because they don't want to do it or you just don't have the resources or connections, then why don't you just like not do it? Like do another show. Like just do another show. It's okay. You can't do Peter Pan this year. You can't find your Tiger Lily because you're not going to cast that white girl to be Tiger Lily. Like that's okay. You don't have to do it. You do not have to do the show. You would never do Othello if you couldn't find a black man to play Othello. So why would you do this if you can't find the Indigenous woman and Indigenous folks to play those characters? That's like, I don't know. Yeah, there's already like now it's better. Now it's better that there are many Indigenous stories that have folks creating their work for themselves. But, you know, so many years ago, there was not many Indigenous stories, especially in the mainstream.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's like a part of me like, if you're going to make them aliens, if you're going to make them like an all girl group, or you're going to make them like, I don't know, just someone else, like, I don't know. It's still a sense of erasure to me. I don't know. It's like a food for thought.
It is for sure.
It's so
and no, and like I think that is the perspective that I had as well until I started reading everything from, because if you go onto Twitter, basically there's a really good hashtag related to exactly this, which is not your Tiger Lily, and it's all these Indigenous perspectives to how they've been portrayed. And like truthfully, I don't really have the answer, but just having, and no one really has an answer, but just having read all those perspectives, I think I understand why from what I could tell, the most agreed upon stance from people right now in Indigenous communities seem to be, like just retire her as an Indigenous character.
Right.
And I think see the value in that because there's just such a complicated history with it being more harmful than productive
either. It's not like she's the only Indigenous character that Disney has. Disney has a much more popular Pocahontas, who is
she's also not great though.
Well, that was so inaccurate.
Great, but like she's better. It's kind of a better representation. It's not the best, but it's better, and at least she's more well known. So like, if you do retire her, at least it's not like, well, now they don't have anyone. Like, you know what I mean? So like, I see it on both sides. But my other I did have two other problems with this scene. My other one was, why was Wendy kept telling to go get firewood? I mean,
he was being told to get firewood.
Yeah,
she
wanted to dance with them, and then the mom was like, "You don't get to dance. Go get firewood."
Yeah, twice, and she came back with a bunch of firewood, dropped it, and she's like, "Go get firewood," and I was like, "Why? I don't understand." And then my second thing was, I don't know what they said in the song. Like, to be honest, I have no idea what their point was in that song or what they said. And he was like, and at the end of the song when they're like, that's what makes the red man red, I was like, wait, but what? I'm so confused.
Oh, it's because he kissed a girl and blushed, and then
it's like all these.
Okay, that's what I was getting from the visual, but I like couldn't hear it in the song, and I was like, what? I don't get it.
Yeah, I tried to not really pay attention. My defenses just went up, and I was like, I don't want to watch this. I think that's
what happened. I was just focused on what was actually going on the screen and not what was being said.
I think another thing that like got me was all the men that were not like the chief.
Yeah.
None of them had eyes. None of them had eyes. Then like, or they had bands across where their eyes were. And I'm like, what a way to like, animate.
Dehumanizing them
so much. Dehumanizing. Yeah. It was a very like I understand like in animation when you have like many of the same type of like a crowd of people. But like there wasn't that many in like that line when like they were walking. So like for that to be made, it was like,
I slightly feel like whoever was in charge of the scene was like, you know what? I don't really want to do this scene, and just like put something on paper real quick. It was like, I'm done.
Yeah. I will also say, you know, when they're flying into Neverland and they're like, and like Peter's like, oh, there's the map, and like the indigenous area is literally the most infertile cliff, rocky land, and like they're the like original inhabitants of the land.
Neverland,
like,
yes.
Side to this tiny little corner. I'm like, oh my god, like that's so blatant. Oh, and there was also at the end, you know, when the mom is like, oh, what was your like the adventure, like the recap that Wendy is about to say, she does not mention anything about them, like the indigenous folks. She mentions the pirates, she mentions the Lost Boys, she mentions the mermaids, but not like what, like it takes up so much time.
I think that was her least favorite part, to be honest.
Well, actually, related to that, I thought this was interesting. That since the movie kind of frames the Neverland adventure as being Wendy specifically, like her dream, what does that say about her perception of indigenous cultures?
Wow!
Complete erasure. That's such an interesting. That's a really interesting take, Bob.
Oh yeah, for sure. And another reason it makes me not like it being in Wendy's imagination, but yeah, no, I guess we kind of moved away from it, but just to go back to something that you were mentioning, Lisa, about embracing the characters and trying to reinvent them. Granted, even though in my video I say, as we'll see, that I think now there's value to eliminating them if you can't do it right. I do also, like in my heart, and I feel like maybe it's not appropriate for me to have this view as a non-Indigenous person, but I would love to see like a Tiger Lily princess movie that's done appropriately, because like I've said, like I'm all about having stories about princesses that are like that are inclusive, that also just show leadership in some capacity. Plus she's one of the only like original BIPOC princesses. Granted, it was based in racism, but like she's there, and I think that there is something magical there as well.
It would be a much better like remake. That you can't remake Pocahontas, the Disney's version, because that would be historically inaccurate again.
Yeah.
So if you do want to make an indigenous princess, Disney can hire a whole indigenous creative cast and really do it justice. And like, what a beautiful experience that could be.
I mean, I'm fairly certain.
Is Tiger Lily deaf?
Is what?
Tiger Lily deaf?
Tiger Lily deaf? Because they only spoke in sign language and she never spoke.
Yeah, that's another thing that is problematic. Like one of the posts I found on hashtag Not My Tiger Lily is that her being silent in this movie is just in like it's teaching indigenous girls that in the face of violence from grown men, they should just be quiet and accept it and be
men, white men.
Yeah. And that it just kind of ties into like the atrocities of violence against indigenous women.
Then they spoke sign language though, so I was like, "Are you?"
But it wasn't. It's not sign. It's like it isn't. It's not even pre-sign language. Like it's so.
Yeah.
It's like it's mimicking. It's like this terrible stereotype of like being a silent, submissive indigenous woman, and it's like.
I didn't get that, but I was like, oh, like, is that why she doesn't speak? Because that would be a lot better than anything else that I could think of.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah,
I'm certain that Disney would have done a much better job on a film like Pocahontas nowadays, because they do put together like groups of people to talk about whether they're doing things in the right way. Like Moana, they had a group of Polynesian people from different islands, and they did the same thing for Raya and Encanto. And so I think that I would love for them to tackle again a Native American story. I would love for them to do a magical story, because Pocahontas was like this historical figure where they added magic to it, but
The magic in that movie is the worst part.
There's only so much you could do with that.
Oh, that's like a whole other talk.
Oh, it's true. Just the fact, that the magic teaches her to speak English in a second, I'm like, no, this is not.
Yeah, no, that's like a whole different movie, like review.
Yeah, it's true. Has its own problems.
Yeah.
I wonder if that has the disclaimer. It must have the disclaimer.
I think it does. That one, and Dumbo has one because of the crows.
And Pinocchio has
Pinocchio,
one.
yeah.
I think
it's safe to assume almost everything before like 1985 probably.
Except Bambi, I think. I don't think Bambi has it.
Yeah,
I think it has a violence warning.
There's a violence warning. Yeah, like Cinderella and like Sleeping Beauty don't, because it's all just white people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to see them have an indigenous princess. But then if it comes to that as a film, then my next thought would go to, as much as I would personally love to see the Tiger Lily princess movie, and I'd be all about that, like give us a fantasy indigenous princess, absolutely. But then would there be more value to just actually basing a film around a story from an actual indigenous culture at that point when you're going to make a movie about an indigenous princess? I would, in some ways, even though I love Peter Pan, I think it would be more valuable to do what Disney does, where they Disneyify and give us a folk story through the lens of Disney. And I don't think they've done that yet with an indigenous folk story or an indigenous legend. And from what I remember from all that education in grades 2 through 4, like there's a lot of really good stuff.
There is.
There's so many cultures outside of European culture that they can have.
They can take a character from
African culture.
Yeah. They could take like her best friend that was in the first movie that you never heard anything about after the first movie. Like they could take her and be like, what did she do after Pocahontas left? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, we got Journey to a New World. I feel like that one's probably worse. Shows her going to England.
No, like her friend. Like after Pocahontas leaves, what does her friend do?
Oh yeah,
she dies. She literally dies historically. Historically, they're all dead.
Yep.
Like nothing good happens.
Agreed. Oh, there have been so many great things in the chat, but I've been so engaged in talking to all of you, and I have been reading the things in the chat. But let's go through them. We're gonna go way back because I want to acknowledge all these wonderful things.
Yeah, I've been reading stuff in the chat too. There's so much.
Yes, I will say I only within the last 2 weeks have I realized how lucky I was to have had the education that I did. Like at the time, it was just another thing that they were teaching us. And like anything in school, I was like, this is kind of boring, but it definitely shaped my perspective and my understanding. And again, they could have done more, I'm sure, but I'm so grateful that I have what they gave me because Peter Pan didn't affect how I thought of indigenous groups. So thank you, grade 2 through 4 teachers. And oh yes, and Pocahontas, good times. Say that about so many things. Canada too. Canada's done a lot of terrible stuff. Yeah. Oregon, I grew up in Northeast. Yeah. Florida.
This is I did not know this.
It's like a big in the South. That's why they got rid of like all those like statues of like Southern Confederates, which I was like, okay, I understand. But like also like then you're just erasing the problem and causing it. Like I don't know. There's like two sides of that argument that I'm not really privy to since I'm not from the South. I just now live here. So
that just fascinates me how education can be different. So like
in one
from one state to another. Yeah. Also, Disney misrepresenting voodoo. I feel like Princess and the Frog probably isn't as accurate as it could be, is my guess.
Yeah, probably.
Well,
in Princess and the Frog, there's no way. I think it's based in like the 1930s or the 1940s. There's no way she would end up owning her own restaurant. Like, I hate to say it, but like in a white world like that, like there's no way.
But
although
in America,
I like how Princess and the Frog they don't pretend racism doesn't exist, but I think they touch on it in ways that are appropriate to spark discussions with kids. Like when the bank owners say a woman like you isn't going to have very much luck running a restaurant, I'm like, that like to me that's a good way to open the conversation because they're not going down the erasure route. They're not pretending a Black woman in 1920s America would just easily be able to start her own business. They are acknowledging that there is a struggle there, but they're doing it in a way where they can still have the fantasy element of the Disney film, where it is still a princess movie that has some ground in reality. Like I think Princess and the Frog is balanced in a nice way. There are probably problems, but I think it was a good step.
You know, I've never seen Princess and the Frog yet. I need to.
Oh my gosh, we need to do a whole one for Princess and the Frog. Oh, I think this is about Pocahontas. They had native consultants working on it, and there was approval, even with the historical inaccuracies. Oh, this is when I said.
To be honest, though, I didn't know Pocahontas was a real person until I was like about a sophomore in high school, and when I found out, my mind was completely blown. I was like,
"It's
what?
You know what?
They made the terrible second movie. They could have just left it as is."
You know, having Indigenous consultants does not free you from your wrong as the white creator, because I had a friend who was like an Indigenous consultant for a show. And the white director disregarded everything she said, but she still credited the Indigenous consultant. And the Indigenous consultant was like, I did not approve that. Like, this is not it.
No,
so
that's
I think like that, I don't know. People can say whatever they want and it's still not good. Like,
like again, it depends on who ultimately makes the creative decisions and how much they're willing to listen. Again, NBC Peter Pan. Ugh, that one is they're just such a missed opportunity because they came so close.
One that was good. I've never heard a good NBC production.
I liked Rents. I like when they did Rents. It was decent.
No, I think that was Fox.
Oh, was that Fox?
Oh yeah, it was. And Fox did Grease, which was the best one so far.
What about Jesus Christ Superstar?
That was NBC. That was a good one. I like that one.
Yeah, I like Sarah Bareilles as Mary Magdalene.
Yeah, I forgot.
I will say that Audra McDonald as Mother Superior in Sound of Music.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was good. Yeah.
You know what's interesting? That NBC can do all these like live productions of Disney films, but Disney doesn't own NBC. Universal does.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah. I just realized that. I was like, are they purposely making it bad then?
Wait, what? Which one? What's NBC doing that's a Disney? That's Disney.
You said that they did they've done a lot. They did a Little Mermaid live on stage.
That was ABC.
That was ABC.
That was ABC.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you said NBC did Peter Pan?
Yeah, but they did the musical.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, because Peter Pan, well, the rights for Peter Pan are weirdly complicated because Jan Barry left them to a hospital, like a kid's hospital. And so when the rights were up for going into the public domain, just because it was a charity, there was a legal case made that they should still be benefiting from it because the hospital needs the money. So some kind of allowance was made, but now more time has passed since he died. So I know in Canada, the script from the play and maybe the novel are in the public domain.
Yeah.
It might be the same in the States because I think there's been because Once Upon a Time wouldn't have happened if Peter Pan wasn't in the public domain there. Yeah, it's very confusing. If it was more interesting, I'd do a video.
Public domain soon.
Really?
The next few years.
Steamboat Willie Mickey is going to be in the public domain soon, but Disney's doing tricky legal things to still own him.
They're always
blame them. Like if they lose Mickey Mouse, they're kind of.
They have a long-standing legal thing that involves Mickey Mouse and keeping the trademark on him, the copyright, and that case has helped protect everything else since Mickey Mouse,
right?
Like Superman, Captain America, everything else that so, and they renew it like every I don't know how many years it encompasses, but they do it every year.
I heard something about that, but it was too legal for me to really look.
Well, I know Winnie the Pooh just went into the public domain this year.
Something's going on with Winnie the Pooh going up for public domain.
Yeah. Oh, Winnie the Pooh is public domain now.
Yeah.
But novel Winnie the Pooh, so you can't take ownership or do stuff with the elements that Disney has a stronghold on. Like the character designs that we think of when we think of them. Like, if you want to do something with Winnie the Pooh, you have to have a very generic looking stuffed teddy bear and just say this is Winnie the Pooh. And yeah. Oh, Audrey, you want to hear the legal dealings of Peter Pan ownership? I'll do that.
That would be very interesting.
It would. Well, there's so much history that I find interesting with Peter Pan. Like to do with representation and Tiger Lily, which again is this week's video, to do with J.M. Barrie and that weird, tragic, complicated history, and then even just the legal battles. There's so much in Peter Pan. I love it. Oh, we didn't even really talk about Tinkerbell.
Oh, Tinkerbell. What a problematic character in this movie. But as her everywhere else, she's great.
Where like the Tinkerbell series and the Tinkerbell movies fall in like regards to Peter Pan. Because does it all happen before? Because if it happens before, I don't understand how that Tinkerbell ends up being this Tinkerbell. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And then, like, why would she then leave Pan? Because clearly Pan needed her and Pan loved her and had her trapped like everyone else. So, like, why would she then leave to go be on her own and go back to live with the fairies? Like, I want to know where it comes from.
The Tinkerbell movies happen before she meets Peter Pan.
Oh.
She acts like a child.
Oh, that makes me so sad.
So, like, she regressed.
Yeah. I remember reading that somewhere. Because I was curious about the
Yeah, I've never seen a Tinkerbell movie, unfortunately.
I would love to see a version of Peter Pan where Wendy and Tinkerbell gang up on Peter to like just bash out his toxic masculinity. Like that would be amazing.
Well, this movie it's classic women against women.
Yeah.
Like, why can't they just get along? And Tinkerbell is such a petty little brat.
But like literally, like she like was planning on killing her. Like that's so ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, in something that I remember from having read the book a long time ago, one of the big things I thought was interesting was that it says the deal with Tinkerbell is that because fairies are so small, they're only able to have one emotion at a time and they feel it at its most extreme. Mm-hmm. And when I read that like weird fairy tale logic, it made Tinkerbell as a character make so much more sense to me, how she could just turn on a dime from being like mischievous to actually trying to outright murder Wendy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I mean, I still don't condone the murderous streak that she has, but maybe it's not Tinkerbell's fault. You know what? I don't want to blame Tinkerbell here. I want to blame Peter, because Peter seems to have this weird hold on everyone. Like he like hypnotizes Wendy and her brothers, and like Wendy's obsessed with him, and then all the mermaids, and then all the Lost Boys. Like, what is that? Like, why?
If the attention's not on him, he gets very upset. And I was like, dude, like literally they are about to drown Wendy here. Or like Tiger Lily is literally drowning and you're trying to save her and you just left her there to almost drown by herself. Just so
and there was like that weird isn't that there like this weird exchange where like he saves Tiger Lily and like he's like, oh, like aren't you gonna
and Wendy's like, wait for me.
I
know. Like, oh my god, please stop.
It's like I feel like it was like this like male desire, this like male gaze of like what a great life it would be just to always live as a boy and like have all this attention as a guy. And I realized like watching that, like
that's a man, that's not a boy, that's like man thought.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. But like he has this Peter Pan syndrome of like always wanting to be a boy. And it's weird because like growing up, I'm like, I remember like always like talking to the guys in my class and they would be like, yeah, Peter Pan's my favorite Disney movie. And I'm like, oh, well, I wonder why. Like there is such a central role. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, I mean, male representation in Disney films is not always the greatest either. Because it's always like Prince Charming and whatever. But
we have Simba and Hercules and Aladdin. Like, those are the
Aladdin. Well, Aladdin's a liar, but
yeah. He learns though. He's flawed. He's a flawed protagonist.
But yeah, I mean,
he doesn't have parents. Come on, Lisa. Yeah. He doesn't have parents.
I just know that Jasmine could do better. That's all. Okay, I know Jasmine could do better.
Oh, of course.
I mean, you got Aladdin or you got the pedophile.
I know, right? There's slim pickings here.
That's why Simba's always the answer.
This leads me to my other point. I feel like Peter Pan, especially in other versions I've seen, he's actually like it seemed, and I don't know if this is because I have watched the Robin Williams one and it creeps me out that like I don't see Peter as a boy. I know he's supposed to be a boy, but I don't see him as a boy. I see him as like probably a teenager, roughly like obviously very much older than all these other people, which in my opinion, if you are a teenager, you're not a boy. They're not like, it's not what they meant it to be. And because I felt like they meant it like, oh, you never grow past the age of like 7, which is what all the other boys are.
But I
don't
really
like
older.
that he like kidnaps these people.
No, and I think for this movie, it makes a difference to have, first off, to have him voiced by a male actor, which was out of the norm, because this was the first talking film adaptation of Peter Pan. So like there was no standard set. Anyone who had seen Peter Pan had only seen it previously on stage, or a silent movie, but not many people saw that one, but seen it on stage with a woman playing Peter, which we kind of discussed last week. Lots of reasons, like physically to fit the harness, but also because like more childlike if you're going for a boy. And I think just that difference of having a male voice that was either mid-puberty or like it's a lower voice. It doesn't sound like a young male child. Yeah. So it definitely puts Peter into a different age bracket that changes the context a little bit versus if you have like the Mary Martin Peter Pan, not Mary Martin, well, I guess, but the Kathy Rigby Peter Pan, who's still my favorite. That to me feels like a legit 7 or 8 year old kid, male child. And that changes the dynamics so much and also changes the relationship with Wendy. And I prefer it. That's why I like the musical more.
See, I watched regular Peter Pan first, and then I saw that. So I was so confused. I was like, that's a girl. Why is a girl Peter Pan? Like, my little 5-year-old brain could not comprehend it. And we had that on VHS or DVD, whatever, for like ever. And I watched it maybe once. I don't even know why we had it on TV. I don't even know why we bought it. Yeah, I just don't. It just creeped me out. I was like, this is just a really creepy movie, and I don't like it. Especially like with some of the stuff that he does, like kissing girls and going after girls. Like I was like, that's not like boys think girls are icky. Like that's like.
No, I think it's still like 1950s mentality. As well, of like what was acceptable in entertainment, especially
to go chase the girls. Like, that's like, it's coming from a time period of that, but still doesn't make it right.
Oh no, definitely not.
No,
it's like Pepe Le Pew with that poor cat.
And then like the line that really got me at the end that I never realized before was when Wendy says, "Oh yeah, Peter Pan dropped us off and left with the other Lost Boys because they weren't ready to come home yet." And I was like, Why? Like, I feel like at some point in the movie, she realizes like what's happening here. And she's like, we got to get out. We got to get out. And I'm going to take my brothers and I'm going to leave whether you like it or not. And whether they like it or not, we're all leaving.
It turns into an escape.
I definitely feel like Wendy in this one as well. Same as Peter, I guess. She comes across as being a lot older than most Wendys in other adaptations. Like thinking to Wendy in the musical that some of us watched last week, even though the actress is very clearly in her 20s, she's written and she's played as a much younger girl, like probably 9 or 10. And when you think about the movie we're going to watch next week, like that again is a Wendy that, again, she comes across, she reads like 9 to 11, whereas this to me felt like a 13-year-old, like someone who is more like a woman child. I almost said man child, but like that mentality of like you're still in the nursery with your younger brothers. Like I'm with the parents. Like get your own room. Like
it's I found Wendy older, like you're saying, but I also was like I don't remember in like other adaptations like Wendy being so like I want to be a mom. Like the mom is like the dream, and I'm like I'm like what? Like as a little girl who like never aspired to be a mom, or like that was my first not my first aspiration. I always found that very hard to believe. And like when she gets to the Lost Boys and she's like, I'll be your mom. I'm like, oh, what an awful like.
Why not just be their sister? Like that's
like why don't you be one of the kids? Like why don't you be one of the Lost Boys?
Oh gosh, no, actually, you're right. That's exactly it. I think that's what makes it her. I think that's what makes this Wendy so different is that she's not just being put into the role of the mom from a creative standpoint. Like the character is being interpreted as the natural maternal one, as opposed to the other Pan adaptations where she is just one of the kids who happens to be a girl in a group of boys.
Yeah. Like and this is when I remember, like before I rewatched it, I remember thinking of Wendy as like being like one of the guys, like one of the kids. But rewatching, I'm like, no, she's clearly being placed and wanting to be the maternal figure.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like,
and she's wanting Pan's the dad, which is why I was like, this is icky. And then she like gets all upset when the other girls are on him and he's on other girls, and I was like, I don't like
he's it. Like this is like the whole like weird kind of like psychoanalysis of it. Like Pan is not the dad, he's a lost boy. And like, but he still wants all of this like attention and respect. Like it's a very interesting neuroanalysis.
You know, just it feels it feels so much more manipulative, and it just makes me again love the musical that much more, because it like reminds me of one of the things I said last week about how one of my favorite scenes is when Wendy says she's going to leave and go back home, and then Peter says he's not going with her, and then that's when you just realize the age difference between them, how Peter is legitimately just oblivious to the fact that Wendy's in love with him, and that she like and like that I think is the step towards her actually growing up and moving away from childhood, is realizing that she has these kind of adult feelings for him. Like she is it's not just a game for her, like she wants to be with him, but he won't meet her there, and he doesn't understand what the difference is. And to me, that is what makes the story really beautiful and what makes that relationship so beautiful. And then the way it's contextualized in this film, it just has all these weird manipulative subtextual tones that are fascinating but problematic, and not fascinating in ways that were probably intentional. But every Peter Pan is a product of its time.
Product of its time. I wish there was more Nana. I wish there was more dog.
Yes.
I wish Nana would have gone with them to Neverland.
The adventure.
That whole scene of her cleaning up the blocks is just like so perfect. Like the dad ruining.
And then with her little ear.
I hate the dad. I hate the dad. I was like, you do not kick a dog. You don't kick a dog. Knock it off. It's not the dog's fault. You're dumb.
Like, I just love the nursery scene so much.
It's always the best part of every Peter Pan movie, as we see. All right, let's move on to the game.
Yay!
Oh. Woo!
Do you need a paper and pen?
Yes. So for this one, do I want you to write something cute? No, you can just write yes or no.
Okay.
So tonight's game is called You Can Fly.
You can fly?
You can fly. You can fly. Again, the second best flying song in all Peter Pan adaptations. Still love them flying. It's so good. So since this is about the Disney Peter Pan, the game is based on Disney characters who either can or cannot fly. I'm going to give you the name of a character. You have to say whether or not they are flight capable.
They're flight capable.
I'm not going to tell you what the characters or what movies these characters are from, because that's part of the game. You have to.
So it's not going to be anyone's. Like,
you're going to describe them first?
Oh, no, I'm going to give you their name, but a lot of them are, like, I'd say 50% of them, you're going to say, I have no idea who that is.
But, like, it's not anyone that, like, they're, like, sometimes in Disney, there's, like, two characters that have the same name.
Oh, no, there's only one of each of these people. Okay, here we go. So, can you fly? Buzz Lightyear. I forgot to make my score sheet. Hold on. No, he can't fly. He falls with style.
What? He flies?
No.
He does
fall with style. I was like,
at the end of the movie, he does end up flying.
No, he says this is falling with style. And then he
That's
lands.
what he says at the beginning of the film, but then at the end,
he can't sustain it.
Fly.
Although you all said the same thing, so
he flies.
I'll give you all the point because you all said the same thing, so it kind of cancels out.
Rude.
in the chat.
I was like, are we going like with reality because he's a toy, or are we going with like what he thinks?
Oh no, well, Lightyear hasn't come out yet, and when it does, then I think it's canon that Buzz as a character can fly, but the toy's not flight capable. Oh, and that's kind of my logic is that
it's all in your imagination, Matt. It's what you believe. If you believe he can fly, he can fly.
Exactly.
He can fly. Okay.
And according to Andy, he can fly.
This could be a whole debate. Can they fly? Okay, next. Wilbur.
Wilbur from
Wilbur. Yeah, I don't know exactly.
Wilbur who?
Yeah, you know?
Wilbur who? I'm gonna go with Lauren because I trust Lauren's knowledge.
Good. Yeah, very good. Wilbur can fly. Lauren, who's Wilbur?
Rescuers.
Yes.
Where? Who?
The Rescuers. He's
Only my favorite Disney movie.
Of course. A movie
I should have known that.
Yeah, Seagull.
I put that one in just for you, Lauren.
How dare I say Seagull?
Wait, next. Okay, it's kind of a triad here. It's a group of three. Victor, Hugo, and Laverne.
I feel like these are... They could be birds.
We all guessed the same thing. We're just going to have a three-way tie. Yes, they can fly. No points for anyone. They're the gargoyles. They're the gargoyles in Hunchback.
Oh.
There's like during one of the songs they fly at one point.
Okay.
Yes.
I watched Hunchback.
Yeah, it's okay. Musical's better. Eve.
Oh yeah, I know this.
Of course. And everyone, who's Lisa? Who's Eve?
From Wall-E.
Of course.
I was like, who's Eve?
I know for the longest time I'm like, Killing Eve?
Isn't that Sandra Oh?
Yeah.
Okay.
She definitely does not fly.
Canadian treasure. Okay. Timothy Mouse.
What? There's a flying mouse?
No, there's not. He rides a flying elephant, but he himself cannot fly.
He rides
good.
Yeah.
I was like, this could go either way with the way that you're going.
Right? No, that was kind of my benchmark, is that if they fly a device, then they can't fly. Okay. If it's a Peter Pan situation where like magic makes them fly, then it counts.
Okay.
Yeah. Next. Burrito the donkey.
There's a donkey named Burrito.
In what movie?
Well, I'm going to start to get you to put your answer up last. Yes, you're all right. Burrito the donkey can fly.
Who is that?
Lauren, who's Burrito the donkey?
Yes. From the Gauchito and Burrito sequence of the Three Caballeros.
Okay, yes. Okay.
So it's about the jockey who finds the flying donkey so that they win all the races, which technically cheating, but whatever.
Wow, these are so tough. These are tough.
Right? Well, I know I looked up Disney characters who can fly, and so many of them were obvious. They were all birds. I was like, that's not a fun game if I say Scuttle. Like,
I wanted you to say Scuttle. I was like waiting
bird.
for
Well, actually, is Scuttle on the... No, Scuttle's not on the list. Next, Lambert. Lauren, show your answer last. Okay, Lauren, you can show. Yes, Lambert does not fly.
Who's Lambert?
Lauren, who's Lambert?
Lambert the cheapest lion.
Yeah.
Oh.
These are like the randomest Disney movies that you are coming up with.
I'm clearly
studied them all the time.
Oh my God.
Mary likes my characters.
I'm impressed by your choices.
This game took me almost half an hour of research. Like I finished work, I was like, oh, I should probably get the game ready. Then I was done. I was like, well, that wasted a half hour. There we go. Next, Diablo.
I've heard this one before. I can't picture what he is though.
Yes.
Wait, that's not.
Jess.
That's the wrong live stream.
You're all right. You're all tied. Oh my gosh.
What is he?
It's
What is
the Sleeping Beauty, the crow of
Maleficent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He came up to my face and was like this close to me at the parade the other day, and I was like, "Whoa, dude!"
So
back
magical.
it up.
Okay, next, Dante.
Dante's Inferno.
I'm gonna do this one.
You're all right. He can fly.
He's from Coco.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Coco.
He's the dog.
That's
When
the-
he becomes
yeah.
Lord Three-Headed, he can fly. It's so magical. Okay, next from the
Barely,
regular
he can.
round, Bolt.
Oh.
You're all correct. Bolt cannot fly. I can't even remember if that's one of his fake superpowers from the TV show, but if it was,
Aww.
It's up for trade if
Twin
anyone
twins,
wants
I
it.
have that one too.
that's so cute. All right. Well, we're in a three-way tie. You all have 8 points. So it's really just going to come down to whoever wins the bonus question. Because normally I would get you to wager, but there's going to be one clear winner for the bonus question. So whoever wins this wins the game. Okay.
What do you mean a clear winner?
Oh, because there's only one right answer for this. So it's a number. So
Oh.
whoever comes closest, I would say without going over, but who's to say? Whoever comes closest will win. Here we
Okay.
go. How many times are the words "you can fly" spoken and or sung in Peter Pan?
The whole
Disney's
movie.
Peter Pan. The whole movie. Song, spoken dialogue. How many times do we hear the words "you can fly"?
In the Disney
Are you
movie.
counting you
the Disney
can't
movie.
fly?
Not counting "you can't fly," just "you can fly." How many times are those 3 words said together or sung together in the entire movie?
Did you count this, or are you?
I
like,
pulled up the
Google it?
transcript.
You
and
can
then
fly
did a
as one
search.
one singular phrase, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
god.
let me know when you have your
Whole
answers, and then we'll
song.
compare them all at the same time. Martha's guessing 82.
Oh my god. What?
You can fly, you can fly, you can fly.
Yeah.
So the chorus alone has 3 of them. So how many
Yeah.
times do they have the chorus? But then how many times do they just say it? Like in the nursery, like, you can fly, he can fly.
Are
Oh,
you counting?
dude.
He can fly.
I'm not counting those. It's only when they specifically say you can fly. So in the nursery scene, when it's like, I can fly, that doesn't count. He can fly, that doesn't count.
It's I.
Only you can
Yeah.
fly. Because that's the name of the song in the game. Okay, Morgan says 112. Lisa, what do you think?
think. I'm gonna go 32.
32. Okay, Lauren, what do you think?
I'm actually going for 7.
Damn it, Lauren!
Let's check in the chat.
Oh, I went high. Dang it.
44.
I figured there was at least 50 in that song alone.
I'm going to say nobody got it right, but one of you got the right numbers in the wrong order.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
23.
The answer is 23. Lisa wins.
Yay!
Only 23 times?
Yeah. Well, again, think of all the variations because there's a lot of I can fly, he can fly.
I'm so proud of myself.
You should be. You came so
Today's been
close.
such a hard day. This is such a win.
Take what you can get. There it is. Brilliant. Well, congratulations, Lisa. You won the game.
Thank you. And you know what? Big appreciation to Lauren because he helps me a lot.
Lauren, I'm so impressed at your knowledge of Disney characters that can and can't fly.
I know.
It was really good.
I watch Disney things way too much.
Well, I knew at the very least from your 0 to 60 series that a lot of those would be on
Yeah.
your radar recently, like the donkey. The donkey I specifically put in, I was like, he's definitely watching Fantasia or has watched, not Fantasia, Three Caballeros recently. Oh, yeah, because you're into the 50s now. That was 40s. The wartime era.
Mm-hmm.
Love Three Caballeros. So
the Silver Age.
I didn't know they had a movie.
Oh, they sure do. And I feel like there's probably stuff that's not great in that too for racism. But like Peter Pan, the stuff that's good is great. Has a jaunty little song. It's catchy. It's and there's a lot of fun like live action animation hybrids. Because also that came out in the era, and Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, because you've probably done more research on this than me. It came out in the era when I think the American government reached out to Disney to say, can you make a lot of South American-based films so we can like be in their good graces politically right now?
Yeah.
And then Disney said yes.
Saludos and Three Caballeros were the two bad films that they did.
Yeah, and I feel like because that was the motivation, we got a little bit more cultural authenticity in those films than we get in other movies. So there's a lot of live action footage, at least in Three Caballeros, that was shot down in South America, which is really nice, as memory serves. And maybe marathon might happen one day. We'll see. Anyway, there we go. Any closing thoughts on Disney's Peter Pan for this evening? Anything, that we haven't discussed? Any last points we want to wrap up with? Let's start with Lauren. Oh, I cut off Morgan. Let's start with Morgan.
Peter Pan is the ultimate kidnapping story.
I accept that.
My final thought is that Hook is not the true villain in this story, and it's actually Peter Pan, racism, and women hating women.
Yep.
I heard a theory that Hook was a runaway lost boy.
Ooh.
I don't want to sympathize with a cruel man, but
I do like that. That's interesting. I think it'll be interesting.
Peter so much because he took him away from his family and made him grow up.
Interesting.
Okay, I can get on board.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see how next week's movie compares because I haven't seen it in like 10 years.
Yeah.
So I want to see if these same things are pertinent and if it's just embedded in the narrative of Peter Pan or if it's just this specific adaptation.
I've never seen the live action Peter Pan, so I'm really looking forward to it.
It's been so long for me. So I'm excited. And it is from what I can tell, it's the most culturally appropriate Tiger Lily in any movie. So like, that's cool. Like it's the one movie that kind of gives me a glimmer of hope that it is possible to not do that racistly, but we'll see. And Lauren, closing thoughts?
I'm just gonna again leave us with a closing thought that if anything, the film is brilliant in terms of its artistry.
Well said. Absolutely. Like I could just look at still images of this movie and be happy. Actually, no, I do like the animation too. Like I said, the flying sequences are gorgeous. There is a lot that's great, a lot that's problematic, and discussions need to be sparked. And I'm glad we sparked them. Hopefully people will find this video, show their kids, and be like, this is why it's not good. Watch this before you watch Peter Pan. There it is. Oh, Mary, it's the 2003 Peter Pan with Jason Isaac as Captain Hook and Jeremy Scrumpter as Peter Pan. It's delightful. Well, I can't remember. We'll find out together. All right.
I feel like I watched it. I feel like I watched like all of these at one point in my life, but I just don't remember them.
That's kind of the thing with Peter Pan. It becomes a core memory with no specifics. And you rewatch it, it's like, oh yeah, that.
You're like, whoa, I forgot all about that.
Like, I'm excited for next week's because it's the one Peter Pan adaptation that does everything I talked about in my video last week with acknowledging that the mom is depressed because her kids are dead. I'm like, that's the core of the story.
Wow.
Acknowledge that.
What?
Yeah. Did you not watch my video, Morgan?
Yeah.
Like it's this whole thing where, well, it's kind of Matt's interpretation, but it's also historical context that Peter Pan was in part written as a reaction to how J.M. Barrie's family reacted to his older brother dying at the age of like 12 or 13. And the mom went into a really deep depression. And she just wanted that specific kid to come back because he was very much her favorite. And she didn't make any qualms about hiding that. And so Peter Pan is kind of rooted in the grief of a parent losing their child, and that's more pertinent in Mrs. Darling as a character in the book and kind of in the play, about how she sits by the window waiting for the kids to come back, but they don't. And then when they actually do, she doesn't accept it because she's imagined it for so long. And yeah, like it's so sad and so beautiful. And like the movie for next week, I distinctly remember the mom, like they go there with the mom actually embracing the trauma of, I don't know where my kids are, and I just have to accept that
I
they're
feel
never
like I
coming
did
back.
see that movie. It came out in 2003, you said?
Yeah.
Definitely probably saw it.
Yeah, it's a good one. Well, I think, again, we'll see, because the mom, like, she's given the attention and the respect she deserves, which the Disney movie did not do. She just comes back from a party. She's like, I had so much fun at my ritzy, rich British person social gathering.
Which, by the way, the kids go away at 3 a.m. Are they back within 2 hours? Like, I mean, what is these parents
What was happening
going
at that
out
party?
at 3 a.m.?
I have a question. Was Mrs. Darling in this version the same animation as Cinderella? Because there was some similarity, or like was like,
you mean like, did they copy her?
Like
yeah,
same design?
same model.
Disney was known, or is still known, for recycling some of its animation, so it could be. The design definitely looks like whoever designed Cinderella, which I want to say it was Mark Davis, designed Mrs. Darling as well. So that could also be why it looks similar.
It does look like Cinderella's like pink dress that she never gets to wear, and then like with Cinderella, but with just brown hair.
And like just like, yeah, with her hair, like her hairstyle, I was like, that yeah. My partner was very much like, that looks like Cinderella. And I was like,
it wasn't even on my radar, but I believe it.
Yeah.
Look her up now. Hold on.
Interesting. Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Oh, see, so much to discuss. I love Peter Pan. Okay. Anyway, we're almost at 2 hours. So you know the drill. I'm going to full screen you. Tell us who you are, what you have coming up, and anything you would like all 10 of our current viewers and all, like, I'm going to say 73 of our future viewers to know.
Hi, so I'm Morgan. I have a live stream series that's going to be starting. So the third Wednesday in every single month, I'm going to have a teaching live stream where we talk about all things teaching. And this month's theme is story time. So if you've ever watched those like, oh, blank moments in teaching, or like, you'll never believe this happened to me kind of things, like, you're gonna want to watch it because it's gonna be probably really, really funny, and you're not gonna believe half of what you hear, but I 100% believe it is all true because kids do crazy stuff.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Can't wait. Thank you, Morgan.
Hi.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi. Well, you all can follow me on my Instagram at Lisa_A_Alves. I post a lot about my hamsters, Eleanor Waffles and Theodora Umbrella, so you can follow them too. And you can follow my theater company, Cahoots Theater, at Cahoots Theater on all social media sites. We're based in Toronto, Canada, and we have a show coming up in June, so we can't wait to announce that. Thanks so much for having me here.
Thanks, Lisa. Lauren.
Yes, you can find us at Castles, Capes, and Clones on YouTube and on Instagram. Tomorrow, doing a Stitch Crashes Disney pin collection thing, and then from 0 to 60 on Friday, we are doing Sleeping Beauty, the last film of the 1950s, and then this weekend, 2 box lots and a collaboration.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. So excited. Bye. Until next week. And friends, if you're watching, this is my channel. Please subscribe. If you haven't, please do it. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Peter Pan Movie Marathon. Again, next week we are going to be talking about the 2003 live action Peter Pan. Big deal there because I think it's the first live action Peter Pan film, at the very least, like the first live action one that had a sizable budget. So much to discuss there. But until then, thank you for joining us. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees, and that's the tea cup for one. How do I end this?